Sounds good. Oh, there are a lot of nice shoes up here. What a treat for me to stand in front of you and introduce the folks that we have up here today and our partners that are here to talk to you. My name is Maureen Hartman. I'm the interim library director for the St. Paul Public Library. I heard that little woo. Thank you. I will take that woo. And of all the many awesome things I get to do as part of this job, one of my most favorite is Read Brave. And so Read Brave, which is the reason that we're here tonight, has been happening in the St. Paul Public Library for 10 years. It is awesome. And through Read Brave, we read together in the city of St. Paul with our young people, in our schools, with folks of all ages. And 5 years ago, we worked with Mayor Carter to make Read Brave even bigger, even more impactful by selecting a theme and then curating a collection of books for readers of all ages. And that is what we've done today. We continue, though, to prioritize the selection of a book that's for teenagers, and we bring authors into the schools to meet with students and then to be in conversation with young people, our mayor and the author. And so it is my great privilege, and I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation today. And we have a couple folks that I want to make sure that I acknowledge and let them speak briefly. I want to thank the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library, who is the best partner that a library could have. Don't try to run a library without a Friends of the Library group like ours. And also our partners from People Incorporated. Thank you. Thank you for partnering with us around this really important topic of mental health this year. Read Brave is a library program, but it doesn't have the impact that it has now without our partners, so thank you. So I'm going to introduce Beth Burns from the Friends of the Library, and also then right after that we'll have Jill Wiedemann West with People Incorporated to welcome you here. So I'm going to turn that over to Beth.
Thank you. I'm just going to stand over here so I'm not standing in front of you guys. But in the same way that you describe this being a program that is really meaningful, I think as president of the Friends, a role I've had now for 7 years, I don't know if I should say this, but I love Read Brave so much. I'm not sure there's another library program. I love Read Brave. I'm personally experiencing what it is to read Brave right now. I was saying to our esteemed author, we have a friend going through a mental health crisis right now, and reading this book together actually has opened up ways for us to talk to each other that didn't exist before we had this book in hand. And the power of literature, I think, drives so much. It certainly drives the work of the Friends. We are the fundraising, the advocacy, and the programming partner for the library, and all of that work is a privilege for us to do. My colleagues Diana and Carrie are here with me this evening, and we do all of this work in service to the library's vision, this mayor's vision, to really make sure the libraries really are dynamic hearts of every part of our community. We don't do it alone. That fundraising happens because we are able to bring people into relationship with the library and with the city through programs like Read Brave. So tonight I get to thank partners like the St. Paul Saints, partnership with the St. Paul Public Schools. We've got a great grant from the American Recovery Program that is funding work, putting books into the hands. The Friends ourselves are a partner in this project. And then in Minnesota, we're so lucky to live in a state with the Legacy Amendment, and arts and cultural heritage funding from the state of Minnesota also contributes to this program. So the Friends are the way in which some of these programs drive forward. It's an honor to do this work. And Jill, I think I get to hand it off to you directly. Okay, I want to make sure I'm doing the right thing. But super glad to be here. Thank you all so much for the work you're going to be doing this evening, and to the partners who make this program so much bigger than we could do on our own. Jill?
Where should I stand so I'm not disruptive? Right here? Does this sound good? So, yeah, right? So thank you so much for doing this. Wonderful, extraordinary, spectacular things happen when you bring great supports and great opportunities for the community and aspirational brilliance and great leadership. And when you bring these things together, amazing things happen. We get to be creative around someone's story. We get to heal around someone's story. So when we look at all the things that come out of someone having an idea that is supported so staunchly by the city and its supporters, individuals with a great spark and an aspiration for doing more, and someone with extraordinary talent that is writing about something that so many people can dig into and go, wow, I'm not alone. There's more out there. There's more community for me. This is really extraordinary, and I know I share this with all of my team at People Incorporated. We're always so proud to be a part of great community thinking and great community solutions. So thank you for all of you for all of that, because it's really exciting. I have the beautiful job of introducing two aspirational thinkers who are very creative and I understand have some very big goals. And that is Megan Lee, who is a 19-year-old student. She is studying psychology, well, good job, and would like to become a therapist. We'll keep you in mind. That is just a really wonderful, wonderful aspiration. We need folks that really understand and want to lean in. So I'm really, really proud to hear that. That's great. And we have Ayana Brazil, who is a senior at Armstrong High School. She enjoys art and embraces creativity. And yes, she is an outspoken advocate for mental health. Wonderful. It is so wonderful to see folks at your age really coming in and saying, hey, got more to say, we got more to do, let's get after it. So I'm introducing Ayana and Megan.
Thank you, partners. And this is the last you'll hear from me, but I did want to make sure that I introduce the other people on the panel, including Adib Khorram, our author this year of Darius the Great is Not Okay. His book, Darius the Great is Not Okay, earned the William C. Morris Debut Award, the Asian Pacific American Award for Young Adult Literature, and a Boston Globe Horn Book honor, as well as a multitude of other honors and accolades. When he isn't writing, you can find him learning to do a Let's jump, is that correct? Practicing his handstands, or, wait for it, I'm turning the page, or, of course, steeping a cup of oolong, which if you've read Darius the Great is Not Okay, you know what an important role tea plays in the book. I got to read this book for the third time over the weekend. This is one of my favorite books. Something you might not know about me is before I got to do this job, I was a teen librarian. I've read a lot of teen books, and there is no teen book with a voice like Darius. So I am so privileged to introduce and welcome Adib and the rest of our panel, including our esteemed mayor. So I'll turn it over to you all.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Well, we're below everybody, and I can't even see you, so I'm going to stand up just a little bit. I might even just sit on the edge of the couch, like we're all like homey here. Although I can hear my mother and my voice saying, "Would you do that at home?" And the answer is no, because I'd be in big trouble. Welcome all here. First things first, I had trouble parking when I got here. And let me tell you, there's no more joyous moment in the life of a mayor than having trouble parking at the library. So congratulations to all of you. That's pretty cool. I'm excited to be here, and I appreciate that you're all here, because you probably know what I'm about to say, but oh my goodness, what an incredible institution the St. Paul Public Library is. I think you need to know that. Please, thank you. You know, Read Brave is just one of the things, from eliminating late fines in our public libraries to introducing social workers so that we can actually connect people to resources that are relevant to their lives today, not just sort of esoterically, but very, very connected to the work that our library does to make sure that we're connected to all of the people in all the different communities and from all the different nationalities and speak all the different languages, to story time in 9 different languages now in our St. Paul Public Libraries. I'm just super, super proud of the work that our library has done in partnership with some incredible partners to stay relevant, to stay in front of the pack, and to ensure that this library is a space. Whenever I walk into the library, I always ask young folks, they say, "You're the mayor." I say, "Yeah." "Do you know who the library belongs to?" And they say, "You." And I say, "No." And I just appreciate the work that our librarians and our library staff do every day to make it ring true when I get a chance to tell young people in every neighborhood of our city that this library belongs to you. So would you give a big round of applause for our library staff? Read Brave is an exciting kind of conversation for us because we again, this has been going on for a decade, but about 5 years ago we decided, you know what, like we need to build the capacity for us as a city to have like big conversations about something. And we, center it around the young adult novel every year, but there's like children's books and there's a nonfiction. And let me tell you, like some of the children's book authors like are either some of the best or some of the worst people who ever lived, because you'll read one of these books and you're like, I don't know why anybody would do that to a baby fox, Like, how'd you even think of this? You're a horrible person. But it's important for us to be able to seed, and we have a 3-year-old, so we're having these conversations around the children's books, and if you haven't read some of the children's books, I mean, there are actually some really profound conversations that can be had that can center around the children's book this year and every year as well. In fact, I found myself, I shared with Director Hartman, I found myself in some really horrible circumstances and trying to figure out how to talk to a mother of someone who had been impacted by gun violence or a community member. And there have been a couple of times in the last couple of months that I've been headed out the door and I've looked at my wife and said, I don't know what to say. And she'll look at me and say, the rabbit listened. And it helps me know how to show up in a moment. So all that to say, my first question to you as the author of this incredible book, I've been dying for weeks to know if you wear your socks like a soulless minion or not.
Oh, I always get ankle socks if I'm like wearing sporty shoes or like dress socks, in which case I will like pull them up the way a dress sock is supposed to be worn. Okay. I've been dying to know that question for quite a while. Oh, no, fair.
When you sat down to write this book, like, what did you sit down to write?
I sat down to write a book about the way it felt to be Iranian American, to be part of a diaspora, to be biracial. And as I got to writing, I realized I was writing what it felt like to be me as a teenager, and that meant incorporating some of my own struggles with bullying, with living with major depressive disorder, with sort of discovering my own queerness. And that also meant a certain freedom to also write about my love of tea and Star Trek, because there was no one around to stop me.
That's right. So what is your favorite kind of tea?
Ooh, right now I'm really loving Phoenix Mountain Oolong.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll write that down. Let's write that down and get that. Well, I'll have tried it next time I see you.
Oh, perfect.
And what's your favorite Star Trek episode?
Oh, no.
I mean, we're cutting to the chase here. We're not, no softball.
No, I know. I mean, after I finished my school visits today, I'm going to be honest, I went back to my hotel and watched the latest episode of Star Trek Picard, and that was phenomenal. So I didn't want to risk being spoiled when I came to this event in case someone else wanted to talk about it. And that was a terrific hour of television. So that's my new favorite. Okay.
When I asked you what you sat down to write, you said you named a bunch of titles of yourself. And one of the things that I think hits you in the face when you read this book is all the titles that are involved. And I was going to say it starts like right on page 1 with Smog and all the different titles that Smog earns or doesn't earn, or but it starts on the title, on the cover, which is Darius the Great. And it ends up being a book from Darius the Great to Soulless Minions to the Ubermensch to all of the above about. It feels like there's a strong theme of people living into or trying to live down titles, none of which are self-imposed, but they're all imposed against somebody else. was that intentional? How did that theme develop? Is that your experience, or tell us about that?
I wish I could say it was intentional, but I think as a writer, I never know what I've done until after it's done, and someone points it out to me, and I'm like, oh, that must have been in my subconscious. Either that or I just got lucky. But I did think about the way that Darius felt all these pressures about how he was supposed to be, and that sort of made him constantly think about how others are or are supposed to be, or how he perceives them. I also think, in particular, living with depression is sort of like a foggy lens over the world. It can distort the way you look at yourself and distort the way you look at others. And one of the ways that it did that is that Darius so often would distill people down to really simple titles that he could categorize them as, because he didn't have any other tools to understand them.
Well, it really struck me how much Darius hates all the titles that he feels like are imposed upon him. Nobody calls it, well, other than Darius the Great, nobody really calls him other things. Well, Darius, he kind of struggles between Darius and Darius. But as much as he hates these titles that he feels like are imposed upon him, he's constantly doing it to other people and inanimate objects around him and things like that as well.
I think it's really easy to take anything that happens to us in our lives and project it outward, sometimes without meaning it, and sometimes harm the people around us without meaning it. And I think that's something that Darius does, and I think that's something that a lot of the people in his life do in different ways. And so much of the novel is about learning to speak up and talk to each other and unpack those mistakes that we're making and try to do better.
Yeah. There's a quote that I heard once, and I don't know the exact quote or the source, so bear with me. But it essentially says that like only a fish doesn't know how special water is, right? Because it's surrounded by water and it's in water all the time. In the same way, we all end up sort of despising our own stories, our own life experiences as sort of less than everybody else's. So I can't imagine what it's like to sit down and write a book that's sort of half fiction and half autobiographical. What part of this, if any, was hardest for you to be honest about?
I think some of the hardest parts to write about for me emotionally was writing about going to Iran as an Iranian American that's born here, son of an Iranian immigrant who came to study and then stayed after the revolution from a family of Baha'i extraction. Iran has always been sort of a mystical place that my family talks about that I might never get to visit. And so writing the book was a way of taking myself on that journey. But it also was really difficult to put a fictional character in the place that I would love to see one day. And certainly, I started writing the book in 2015, but by the time it was being edited and getting ready for publication in 2017, and then published in 2018, the situation between the United States and Iran had deteriorated significantly, and the chances of my getting to visit were even lower.
Right.
And so that was hard. And yet now, as we've seen after the murder of Mahsa Amini last year, and the ongoing protests for the last 6 or 7 months, we are again hopeful that maybe there will be change there, and maybe I will still yet get to go there someday.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, that was a really long and convoluted answer.
Thank you. I was going to say we appreciate your honesty, but I don't have to say it because people said it themselves. Megan and Yana, like, what is your reaction to this book? Was there a particular part or a particular story or a particular aspect of Darius that you particularly felt like you can relate to? I'll start with you, Megan.
Yeah, actually, as I was like reading the book, or I was hearing it because it was audible, but but it was still nice. I've never like read a book before that like I was like, that's me, like I feel like that too. And then so I did feel like a little bit emotional because it was the first time like I kind of felt like seeing, So it was really like touching for me.
What was the first moment like that in the book for you?
Let's see. There was a lot of moments actually. where I was kind of like, you know, I really like felt that. It was definitely the part where he was like getting called names at school. Yeah, that was definitely like, because I've never read a book like that before where they actually talk about that, and it's like directed towards teens. So I'm kind of like, yeah, it really did make me tear up.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that.
I would say kind of like his experiences with depression and like kind of seeing like, I guess like how he puts it is like being stuck. And I have generalized anxiety, so it's kind of the opposite for me, where it's not like feeling stuck, it's like constantly spinning kind of. And so I felt that same way of like, you want to kind of, you know that like this is how your brain is going, and you know like this isn't how I'm supposed to feel, but you just can't stop yourself, you know, and you just keep spinning and spinning. And like kind of towards the end, I think when he had that talk with his dad, that was very like eye-opening, that like his dad was more than the titles that he gives him, and he was more than just his dad. He was a person who also experienced mental health issues, and that kind of hit me a lot. And like, you know, my experiences and my relationships in my personal life is like, you know, with anxiety you spin and you forget that like all of these people around you are also experiencing kind of similar things, you know, like these people are stuck or spinning just the same as you know. And that talk with his dad at the end definitely was very important moment in the book for me, because I did relate to him, but I did relate to Darius a lot, but in like an opposite way, if that makes sense. So yeah, it was very, I did see myself in Darius a lot, and it's one of the first books that I've seen like a person of color talk about their own personal issues and like struggles with their identity and, you know, just their personal family relationships. And it was very impactful just to read.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I also want to add on to that, because a lot of the times with like immigrant parents, it's really hard for them to accept like mental health is a thing. It's really hard for them to accept that. And then also on top of that, sometimes it's just very like difficult to talk about mental health with your parents, because they're coming from completely somewhere else, and it's just like to them, like, you know, survival was really just, you know, like I need to get here today. And so like my mom always tells me like, you know, it's really hard for me, like, because she was from Laos. So it was during the Vietnam War and everything, and they had to cross the Mekong River and all of that. And then so like every time I go through a hardship, you know, I think about how hard it was for my mom, but like at the same time, this is me now. And I'm going through a lot of things too. So it's just like, your hardships are also mine, but I have my own as well. And I just feel like the book really did speak to me on like a personal level. Everything that he felt, I felt exactly the same. So it was really good that I actually had this book brought to me, because it means a lot. It was basically a gift in disguise.
Definitely.
Megan, you said, thank you. Megan, you said that it can be hard to talk to your parents about mental health. Are there environments, are there places, are there people who it's easy for you, this is a question for both of you, that it's easier or easy maybe for you to talk about mental health?
Yes, definitely, I feel like, because I think when my mom was going to high school, they didn't have therapists that were available, but at my high school, or my old high school, they had therapists that were available there. And I think that's a really good resource that a lot of students should definitely use, because both my therapists, like, you know, sometimes like some therapists don't work for you, but it doesn't mean you should give up, you know, like you should still always keep looking. My first therapist, you know, maybe she wasn't the best, but my second one, she was amazing, and the one I have now is great as well. Like I love them both so much. So I feel like you should definitely keep looking for a therapist. It's really, even if it's really hard to talk about mental health to your parents, I feel like you should always find a door where you're safe and you can talk about it. And I really push that for our younger generation. You should not keep that stuff like inside your brain, you know?
Yeah. What about you, Anna?
I think for me personally, it took a very long time to kind of accept my own mental health and like accept that like I go through these highs and lows of, you know, my emotions and just what I'm going through as, you know, like a teenager, you know, normal stuff. But it is more challenging, like especially as like, you know, a Black woman, to kind of make space for myself in different environments and kind of say like, I am struggling and I do need help, and kind of learning more about like the struggles that Black women face like in school and, you know, their work environment, and like seeing that I wasn't alone, it made me more confident in my ability to make those spaces for myself and not just kind of try to find ways to do that. And like school therapy has been very helpful for me because I didn't have to, you know, try to search for it and like, you know, try to struggle my way through my emotions and manage it myself. It was a resource for me to, you know, be myself and vent and, you know, experience my feelings for the first time. And just like once I started to learn those skills, I started to make spaces for myself and like make spaces for people who feel the same way that I do. And I think that's a good mindset for teens to have. Like, if there's not space for you, you can make space, you know, even if it's scary, you can make space for yourself, you know.
That's an important lesson for young folks to know. You also have folks who run nonprofits and libraries and make public policy decisions and things like that, who are here listening to you. What advice do you have for those of us who see ourselves waking up every morning to make sure that there is that space available for you and you don't have to make it for yourself?
Yeah, I would just say that like it's important to not just hear that students are struggling, but to like actually hear how they're struggling, you know, whether it's with, you know, anxiety, depression, OCD, to like hear how these things impact their day-to-day life. You know, it's not just they have this really low point in their life and they go back from it. It's highs and lows. You know, everyone experiences their mental health differently, and to kind of take that into consideration, like one-time things in school isn't just enough. Like, we need to have consistent support for young teens and consistent avenues that they are aware of, you know. Also spreading awareness, like some people don't know about, you know, the things that happen in their own community, and just spreading the word, it touches more people than people realize, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I have good news for everybody who loved this book, and that's there's a sequel. So the Darius we met in Darius the Great is Not Okay is kind of a different person than the Darius in Darius the Great Deserves Better. The Darius the Great Deserves Better sort of kind of has a swagger a little bit, is a little more sure of himself. Is that autobiographical too? And if so, what for you was the sort of pivot point from Darius the Great and Is Not Okay to Darius the Great Deserves Better?
Oh, I wish I could say it was autobiographical, because Darius is much cooler than I ever was. When I was that age, I was convinced I had the world figured out. And only as I got older did I realize I very much didn't. And I think one of Darius's best traits is that he actually asks questions and listens to people and listens to the world around him. And I think there's a really powerful wisdom in that. But I think my impetus in returning to him was having written the first book and seeing it get the response that it got. I felt maybe he had more to say. And the more I thought about it, the more convinced I became that there was value in what he had to say. And it was a really rewarding experience returning to the character. I liken it to putting on a really like comfortable pair of old shoes. Mm-hmm. You're like, oh yeah, that's right, I like these shoes. Mm-hmm. Did I forget part of your question?
No.
Okay, good. I'm always nervous when it's like a really deep question that I'll just like lop off part of the question and forget it. It's okay.
Well, I was asking if it's autobiographical, and because there's an autobiographical theme involved in this.
Certainly.
It's sort of like your own personal historical fiction, right?
Right.
So as somebody who's walked at least some of the steps on the roads that we're just hearing about, what is your advice to young people who feel like they see themselves in Darius the Great Is Not Okay, in transitioning themselves and finding their Darius the Great deserves better self?
I think it's hugely important to find trusted adults where you can, and whether that be parents, therapists, teachers, counselors, finding people that will listen to you, like the rabbit, is so crucial. I think finding your peer group is equally important. It's can be really isolating being a teenager, and finding people that appreciate you for you, that get you, that uplift you and make you want to be the best version of yourself is really crucial as well. And at the same time, I also think there's a certain wisdom that just comes with getting older. As your brain keeps developing and as you as a person just keep simmering, you have new experiences, and you use those new experiences to give context to your older experiences, and realize that sometimes that thing that felt like the worst thing in your life wasn't actually the worst thing in your life because you were able to survive it. And sometimes you're really unlucky and it turns out that worst thing was not the worst thing because a new worst thing came along. But if you're lucky, you have people in your life that make it bearable. And I think at the end of the day, it's all about growth.
Yeah. One of the students you met with at Open World Learning submitted a question, and that is this: you sort of, and I'm paraphrasing it, but you sort of accidentally found yourself in the middle of our debate about academic freedom. Darius the Great deserves better is under investigation in Texas.
For cultural Marxism.
For cultural Marxism. And, I've seen folks who say, like, being a banned book is like a badge of honor. You say it's not. What does it feel like? What did it feel like to learn that, like, there's all these folks who've never met you, who have probably never read your book, who have decided they get to decide from a state house whether it's okay for young people to read this story or not?
It's absolutely infuriating. Yeah. When people say being a banned book is a badge of honor, they're really centering authors and egos. And the fact is, when you write for young people, the young people are the people who mattered. In our schools today.
Clap for that.
Okay, thank you. If you look at our schools today, the statistics indicate every school has multiple students that are living in. Oh, was that Siri? Sorry, Siri. The statistics show that every school in the United States has students that have family members that are incarcerated, has students or with either family members or themselves that are dealing with addiction, has students that are victims of sexual violence, have queer students, have black and brown students. And every time a parent or a concerned citizen looks at a book and says this book is not appropriate because they contain these themes, they are tacitly saying that the people represented by that book are inappropriate for schools. And I don't think very many of them are looking at the actual children in the schools and having to look them in the eyes and say, you're not appropriate to be here. I think they're busy looking in the mirror and saying, my face is what this school should look like, and I'm going to fight for it. And I think that speaks to a lack of empathy that is alarming and damaging and dangerous. And I cannot imagine the heartlessness that it takes to go and decide that your own comfort is more important than the lives of children.
Yeah, I agree. What do we have, 15 minutes left, I think, in the conversation? Are there any questions from audience members for?
Yeah.
Is that allowable? Is that part of what we're doing? Any audience members have questions for our esteemed panel? I can just keep chatting all day long. Yes, please.
So, I'm so involved in listening to this conversation. It's so rich and so needed. And I'm wondering, I heard both of you talk about how meaningful this book was to you in terms of your own personal experiences in reading it. And I'm wondering, how has it helped you to think about how you support and maybe talk to others who maybe are experiencing something similar, but perhaps either haven't read the book or don't feel like they've got that safe place that they can have that conversation.
Do you want to answer?
Oh, yeah, I can go. Well, actually, with the book, my friend is she's kind of going through a moment right now. So we just listened to it together, and it's been really healing for us. Actually, it's been really nice just having like company, and we both we really are involved with the book because we get it, we understand it. Like we've been there because at the end of the day, specifically when he was talking about getting bullied at school and the things that they would say to him and just being a minority, yeah, we really understand the book. And sorry, what was the question? I feel like I know what your question was, but I just feel like I'm kind of going off.
See, okay, I'm not the only one.
I'm kind of question.
I never do that.
Are you asking what advice you would have?
Well, what I'm thinking is how you've used what you've taken from this book and your own experiences to maybe reach out for others like your friend or other folks that haven't read the book but are struggling, and have you been able to really use it that way, and how?
I think that Darius the Great, it really helped you kind of see the outside perspective, if that makes sense. You get to, because I deal with a lot of mental health troubles myself, so it's nice to kind of see someone else's life and you kind of see how they deal with their mental health and how they kind of cope with it on different levels, and just seeing how someone else deals with their depression on the outside, it kind of opens your eyes to how you deal with your own mental health, and how when you're struggling, your brain tells you, push away my family and friends, let me isolate myself and deal with this on my own. And it's no, that's not how you do it. That's not how you cope and how you get yourself out of it. And I think it was important for me in my own mental health to kind of see I do that same thing. I do the things that Darius does, and that's not, at the end of the book, he finds different ways to cope, and he finds different ways to live his life and the type of person he wants to be, and he starts to slowly find who he is. And I think that that's kind of where I am in life as well, and he starts to make friends, and yes, with bullies, but people used to bully, but he is starting to open himself up to new experiences. And if I were to, talk to anyone who hasn't read the book, I would tell them that opening yourself up, even in small ways, just making yourself a little bit uncomfortable and kind of looking your mental health in the eyes and saying seeing it from an outside perspective and saying this isn't me. That is very impactful, and that's, if I were to give anyone advice, I would tell them to just look at it from an outsider perspective and don't let that mental health overtake you,
Can I add on to that?
Yeah, of course.
Actually, it's reading the book and just dealing with depression as well. It's kind of like when you're watching a scary movie and the girl's hello, is anybody in here? It's don't go in there. If I was in there, I would not go in there. Exactly. Why are you going in there? But just reading the book is just
Don't you hear the music?
It's dark. What are you doing? But the kind of reading the book was kind of like that, because I was just kind of he's so stuck in his own world, and it's just get out. It's okay to feel that way, but it's get out. And it's just just seeing it's basically seeing myself in this book, and I'm just I would not do that. But I was this is my life, so let me just not do that. So it was very eye-opening for me as well, and I did learn how to fix a couple habits from this book as well.
Which habits? You can say none of your
just
business.
Just kind of I'm not gonna lie, just kind of self-pitying almost. Yeah, kind of just oh, why me? Oh, this sucks. Just don't make it suck. You just at the end of the day, my kind of mindset that I got from this book is like, at the end of the day, do what you want, because no one cares at the end of the day. It's just like, you think like, oh, my body doesn't look right in this, you know, like, I don't know. But it's just like, at the end of the day, who cares though? Just wear it.
Yeah.
So,
And one of the things that you find out is the extent to which we all spend our lives looking at each other, thinking that's the person who has it all, and that's the person who has it all figured out. And that person's looking at you thinking,
because truth
that's the person who has it all.
Yeah.
That's the person who has it all
Truth is,
figured
the person you want to be wants to be somebody else as well.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, just be yourself.
Yeah. And those are the people who really have it together. What a rich discussion. Who else? Anybody? Any other questions from the audience?
They have some questions too, and we're 7:30.
We're 7:30. Okay, so we got a little.
half hour.
We got 20 more. Oh, fantastic! I've got more questions.
Megan and Yana have questions for you too.
You have questions for me, for us? Okay, go ahead.
I don't remember them.
Perfect.
I'm sorry, me neither. I'm not gonna lie.
Great. Let's just keep the discussion. What? Do you have any questions for Adib?
Well, actually,
Okay.
I like the book so much that I looked up the sequel.
Okay.
Yeah, so I already knew you had a sequel, and I was gonna ask you about that because I'm just like, what is it about? Like,
Okay.
You got to read it.
give me like the, the plan. The
Okay. So Darius the Great Deserves Better takes place about 6 months after the end of the book. So Darius is back home in Portland. He's got a spot on the soccer team at his high school. He has his dream internship at his favorite tea store. And he has his first boyfriend, who's a boy named Landon.
Okay, great.
And everything seems to be going right in his life. And yet, he's still kind of dissatisfied. His family is dealing with the financial fallout of taking an international trip that they hadn't really planned for. He's sort of starting to lose contact with his friend Sohrab in Iran and not quite figuring out why. And he's just sort of gradually coming to the realization that even though he has all the things he thought he wanted, sometimes, to paraphrase the Rolling Stones, sometimes even the things that you want, even when you get them, are not what you actually need. And he's having to learn that lesson. And it's full of lots more tea and Star Trek and Iran, which are three of my favorite things.
Does that sound worth reading to you?
Yeah, I'm gonna get it.
I have a question. You say that, how do you pronounce Tarof?
Oh, Tarof.
Tarof.
Yeah.
Is the primary social cue for Iranians. And on the next page, you say maybe joking is the primary American social cue. Was that an intentional contrast, or like what are you really trying to say?
I wish I knew what I was trying to say at any given moment. I think in Tarof, the sort of loosest translation is debasing yourself to exalt others. And I think in many ways, joking is the opposite. It's often debasing others to exalt yourself. And I think that sort of just speaks to sort of the character of the Iranian people and the character of Americans as a people. Not that one is necessarily better or worse, but I think America is a very individualistic society, and Iranians, as with many other Asian cultures, are very collectivistic societies. And Darius, in his own, way as a teenager grappling with these two conflicting parts of his identity, those are the two things that he picked up on, but doesn't quite have the words like individualism and collectivism to describe.
All right. Do you, Tarof?
No, I'm very bad at it.
Do you want this water?
I have my own, thank you.
Got it. You guys, other
And I think I
questions?
saw an audience question as well. And,
Oh, perfect. Sorry.
Oh, yes.
I'm tethered, so I can throw you the microphone.
And I have a teacher voice, so it's
Okay.
probably
Okay. Well, no, this way they'll hear it over the
That's
online
strange.
streaming.
So, speaking of banned books, is Darius the Great available in Iran? And if so, how has it been received there?
To my knowledge, it is not available in Iran because of the various U.S. trade sanctions. It's really complicated for American books to get sold in Iran. Certainly, my publisher, to my knowledge, has not been approached by any Iranian publishers to acquire the rights and translate it. As far as just English versions of the book, people can probably get them into Iran, but if they get caught by the censors at the border, parts of it might be redacted. I haven't really heard anything about it.
Good question.
Thank you. Oh.
This book actually came at a really good time for me in my life. I'll be honest, I'm in a bad, I've had depression since I was 13, and I'm in kind of the bad low at the moment. But I'm here, so that's good. But I have some friends that are recent Afghan refugees. Okay. And I was trying to explain to them about what depression is. And they said, but your life is great here. And I was like, I know, I'm a white woman, in Minnesota. I have a great life. And they said, but in Afghanistan, people's whole families die and stuff. Like, why are you sad? Nothing bad has happened to you. And you kind of addressed that, your parents have said, we went through this horrible hardship and it's unfathomable for us. And in the book, his grandfather is kind of like, well, what's wrong with you? Why are you like this? And do you have any advice for how to talk to people about that?
That's a good question.
It is. I really wish I did. There are several truths that operate in our world, and one is that one person's suffering never negates another person's suffering. There's no Olympics for suffering. And I think there are certain cultural imperatives that are really hard to navigate. And so when it comes to talking with people that kind of don't have an understanding of mental health, patience is the best weapon you have. Explaining that, no, I'm not sad about anything, and it's not just sadness. I think in particular with Afghanis and Iranians, both are cultures that heavily prize poetry, and so reaching for poetry can be a great way of crossing that bridge. Saying that it's like there's a cloud constantly hanging over me. Finding other ways of contextualizing the experience other than purely through the lens of mental health, which is just sometimes stigmatized or just poorly understood. And I haven't really found a surefire way. As with many things in life, it just comes with getting to know the people you're talking to and putting in the effort.
That's a really good question. Like, I'm still stumped. So I'm kind of like, I'm just thinking, like, because when I told my parents, they didn't really understand either. I was just kind of like, because my mom was kind of just like, it's not that we don't love you, like, we just don't get it. And that's, like, I get it. I understand why they wouldn't understand, So I know that they love me, and it's not that, like, they don't support me. They just don't really understand, and I don't really know how to, tell them. But at the end of the day, like, I just kind of, like, they love me, and if I'm ever going through something, I'm still able to talk to my mom about it. So there's that.
I might add that with many immigrant communities, especially refugee communities, they're sort of still living in the trauma, and that trauma is living in their blood and in the blood of their children. And many of them have never been confronted with the fact that it doesn't always have to be this way, that many of them, in fact, are living with depression and don't have the words for it. And because they cannot imagine the world without it, it's hard to talk with people that know what it feels like without it and are going through it and saying it's not supposed to be this way. It doesn't have to always be this way.
Yeah, and then I definitely always, I kind of like check in with my mom too on her mental health, because at the same time, they don't really understand that. So they don't know how to figure out themselves. So I'm kind of like, Mom, like, how are you holding up? And then I kind of like, it's okay to feel that way. And I'm just like telling her, like, make sure you validate your feelings. Like, everything that you feel, that's completely understandable. Like, you're upset over this, I get it. Like, I understand. And don't ever think, it's too much, or it's like, you're doing too much. It's never too much. It's always just right.
Did anyone ever see Everything Everywhere All at Once? I think that movie has a powerful message about choosing to love one another, even when it's hard, even when generational trauma is throwing up barriers between you and your children, or between children and their parents. Choosing each other and choosing to love is a really powerful force.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't have a question as such. I just want to comment, and some of the things you all said were just so very profound and needed to be shared. And I have been fortunate in that I have pretty robust mental health, but I think what you said about empathy, about the whole banning books, and everybody has to fit what I am, and I think wherever we consider ourselves privileged in some way, it is our duty to cultivate that empathy, and to understand that there are people who have struggles that we don't have. I'm an immigrant myself, but I always say I'm a very boring immigrant, and that I don't have a exciting story. But I am a fierce advocate for resources like the library, which serve the people who come in from Afghanistan, from Ukraine, from wherever, and who need those resources. And I know that we have social workers, and like I said, I'm just a fierce advocate for those things. And my 2 teenagers are constantly educating me. So I just want to echo all the things you said and say that, whether it's allyship, if you're a straight person, whether it's allyship with people who aren't straight, if you have robust mental health, that's good, but know that people are seeking support, and if you have resources to share, you should share. And just the constant journey of being able to advocate for others is the duty of all of us. Those are my sentiments.
Well said. Thank you.
It is well said. Director Hartman, we have a question in the back. While we move the microphone back there, the one thing you said, you don't have an exciting story. And I guess my question for you, as you were living the story that you wrote about in Darius the Great Is Not Okay, did you feel like it was an exciting story that other people would learn? I mean, I have a personal theory that you just can't be an adult in the world, especially these days, or a young person in the world these days, without having a beautiful story. So one of my questions is, as you were living this experience in real time, did it feel like a beautiful story that might change other people's lives?
I felt 2 things sort of sometimes alternating and sometimes both at the same time. And one was that no one would possibly want to read a story about an Iranian-American boy who goes to Iran. Because, I started this book in 2015, which is only a year after the We Need Diverse Books organization was founded. And at the time, the idea of, any brown person being the star of a book was a little foreign in concept. And so I thought, surely no one will read this. At the same time, I had been writing for several years before I wrote Darius the Great Is Not Okay. All of those books had been about white characters. And for the first time, I felt a true sense of purpose in my writing. And so it felt really special to me. And so I guess some part of me hoped that it would be interesting and enlightening and illuminating for people. And I definitely agree that all of us, whether we're young or old, all of our stories are interesting in some way or another. And sometimes it's just, we don't know what's always going to interest other people when they meet us. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the joys of meeting people.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, hi. So this may be more towards the students, but certainly open-ended. So both of you mentioned that there were people in school that helped you, like therapists, and that it was really great to have that resource in school. Working in a school and thinking of like your teachers throughout the day, they have 30 students in a class 7 times a day. What has been helpful for you now or in the past when working with teachers when they have helped support your mental health? Or what hasn't been helpful, like that stands out for you that we can take back into the classroom?
Yeah. I can answer this. I know what has been extremely helpful for me is kind of starting a scary conversation with some of my teachers and saying like, hey, I have anxiety. Like I struggle with deadlines and I struggle with procrastination and motivation, and like especially in the winter months, like I experience a lot of depression during those times, and my schoolwork is impacted by that in those times. But starting that scary conversation, whether it's in person or email, and just saying like, hey, you know, I am struggling. That is what's been the most helpful and the most well received from my teachers. And I feel like a lot of students kind of underestimate how much that impacts their teachers, of just starting that scary conversation with them, because you guys are people too. And you guys understand that deadlines suck and life gets in the way. And I think a lot of teens especially, they get very focused on the scariness of, you know, high school especially, and just thinking of, you know, college and their future, and they get kind of stuck, you know, kind of like Darius, where they feel like they can't really ask for help. And that's definitely been the most helpful thing that I've learned through my high school career, is starting those scary conversations.
Definitely when, I think it was actually my math teacher who put me on with the therapist. Yeah. Yeah, it was actually my math teacher, because he was like trying to teach me something, and I'm like, bro, I'm stressed, like. I was like, please don't right now. And he was just like, he's like, listen, like, he's like, what is really going on? And then so, like, I really appreciate him for doing that, because it was like a doorway almost to like mental health, because before that I had no idea what mental health was. I never even like, I kind of felt like, you know, maybe, but then I was like, I don't know at the same time. And it's just like, and I was telling him, like, bro, I always feel sad, and I don't know why. Like, because I was like, there's like, literally my life is so boring. And I'm like, there's literally nothing like that even like concerns me a little bit. Like, not even this homework right now, like nothing. But I was like, I'm just sad. And he was just like, you know, like, he was like, Megan, we have a therapist here at school. And I'm like, but like, what do I need it for though? And he was like, you know, to talk about how you feel. And I can talk to my friends how I feel. And then they're like, but you know, they're there to actually listen. Because, I mean, like, my friends are kind of like, they'll listen, but then they'll be like, you know, give me their own type of feedback, switch their story, do a flip back, like. But, you know, like, my therapist is great. Like, she'll actually sit there, listen, you know, like, why do you feel this way? Or like, it's okay to feel that way. And I feel like it's always really nice to like feel and just listen and just like hear someone tell you like it is okay to feel that way. Like, I understand, like, just have someone there to validate your feelings, because a lot of the time we're like just like always thinking like, am I doing too much, or like, you know, am I being kind of weird right now, like but you know, it's always good to have that person to be like, it's okay, just calm down, like, you know, take a step back, like, relax, like, you're good. So it's always good to have that, like, that ground. So I really feel like, yeah, I feel like it's really good. I hope a lot of teachers reach out to their students and actually listen to them, because, you know, I feel like sometimes teachers are like, why are you sleeping in class? Well, I was up last night. I had work, ma'am. Yeah. Like, you know, like, unfortunately, it is 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know why I would be sleeping in class. So I just feel like it'd be really cool if they'd be like, why are you so tired? Like, what's going on? You know, like, they actually, like, they didn't just see the problem as is. Like, they actually dug deep and listened, because I feel like a lot of students are looking for someone to listen, and they don't have that. So I feel like if teachers were just more open and would just, hey, what's wrong? Like, what's actually wrong? Like, do you want to talk about it, or do you want to, like, you know, like, let's do something about this, other than just being like, pick your head up, we gotta listen. Like, you know, like, just actually, like, genuinely think about it. So I feel like, yeah, but honestly, teachers nowadays are pretty cool. Yeah.
It's a high compliment. We started off talking about a book, and, you know, this has felt like a therapeutic conversation. And I want to register that I relate to a whole lot of this. As you were talking, I was thinking about some of my conversations I had with my therapist. And, you know, you all, and I heard you say, you know, your parents have their trauma, but you have your own. Mm-hmm. And you all, as young folks, have been through things that none of us have been through when we were your age. I mean, make the list. COVID, the murder of George Floyd, the aftermath that followed. I mean, you know, the economic fallout, like all the things that we've been through. And it's so profound, your ability to tell your story and to be able to just share openly, your ability to share openly. It really means the world. And it can be life-saving. And I was just thinking about a time in college when I felt like the whole world ground to a halt. And I remember on one particular semester thinking that like somebody stopping and asking me if I was okay and really wanting to hear my answer could actually save my life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It does something, like it's an actual impact, like it literally could come from a stranger, just someone recognizing something is wrong and I want to help you.
Yeah.
Just that, like, in itself is really healing. Like, it really does help.
So this is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but in my mind, I'm supplanting the word okay. And I'm seeing Darius the Great is not alone. Because in some ways, this book and this conversation is really centered around feelings of being alone, not just physically, but sort of emotionally alone in the world, and the strength that we find when we find out that we're actually not alone in the world. And so my final question as our time expires, my final question is for all of us. And it's a rhetorical question. My old coach used to always say, your actions are speaking so loud, I can't hear a word you're saying. And so my final question is one for all of us, and it's one that I challenge us to answer with our actions and not with our words. And that is empowered with this book, empowered with this conversation. How will we go through tomorrow and next week and next year in a way that encourages the young people of all ages in our lives to know that they're not alone, and that reminds us to remind ourselves that no matter what we're up against, we're not alone either. Thanks all for coming out tonight. Give it up for our author, please.
Thank you very much.
And sir, you did well, but give it up for our young folks who are here tonight. Absolutely. And it's already been noted, but the Friends of the St. Paul Public Library are just a godsend to our community and to our library system. People Incorporated is here. Can all the folks from People Incorporated just wave your hand? Because it would be remiss for us to leave this space without acknowledging that there are people in this room who dedicate their life to making sure that other people in our community are not alone. Even if they're not okay at the time, that we're not alone. Thank you all for being here.
Oh,
and we
don't
appreciate
forget yourself.
it. Yeah. What did you say? Oh, well, thank you. Yes, yes.
Give it up for the man.
Thank you, Megan. And so you've got books here.
There are boxes and boxes of books available to the community, and certainly anyone here tonight, I will happily sign one for you or for a friend or a loved one or whoever you put on the Post-it note.
That's amazing. The line starts here.
Perfect.
Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks so much, Mayor. Good job, everybody.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Fell to my death. Thank you for your help.